right, so today we are in the Good and Trustworthy Servant, part 18. We're getting close to wrapping up the idea of trustworthy, right? We spent the first 11 parts dealing with good, and then we switched over to trustworthy, and then we'll be switching again to servant. Now, and again, some people might be like, why are you doing this series? I mean, why aren't you doing something special for, the last day of unleavened bread? Chag HaMatzot, day 7. Well, I think one of the most important things that happened that unleavened bread points to is our becoming trustworthy. It's a huge aspect of the journey to Shavuot, the journey to Sinai. When they would receive the covenant and the commandments, it was starting to understand how to trust him and him to look down and realize he could trust us to trust him. Because remember, the whole point is, can he trust you to trust him? Okay? So, we're going to go and look at, real briefly here, the relationship. I said real briefly. We'll see how that plays out. Okay, real briefly, the relationship between belief or trust and knowing or not knowing him. Okay? Belief, trust, because a lot of versions of the scriptures will use the word belief in places that you also have faith or trust. Okay, it can kind of get interchanged there, all right? So go to Matthew chapter 14. Again, make sure your phones are off. Matthew chapter 14, and we're going to begin in verse 22. All right, Matthew 14, 22. All right, and immediately Yeshua made his taught ones enter into the boat and go before him to the other side while he dismissed the crowds. So this is one of those things where, again, trust, I want to put it right up front. He put everybody in the boat and told them to go to the other side, okay? He also basically said, I'm going to meet you, okay? I'm going to meet you, but you guys go to the other side. And having dismissed the crowds, and by the way, for all of you that think that leadership shouldn't or can't do things for themselves, he's dismissing the crowds. He sent the disciples to the other side. And he has a reason for that, and they don't understand yet, okay? But he has no problem, being humble enough to be the one dismissing the crowd and say, okay, teaching's over, time to go home. So having dismissed the crowds, he went up into the mountain by himself to pray. So he wanted to have some private time. So some of you might see me sometimes and realize, I don't need you at that moment. I've been peopled out. And I think Yeshua was also at that moment saying, you know what, I need to recharge my batteries here, so to speak. I'm going to go get to by myself and I'm going to pray, all right? And so when evening had come, he was alone there. So he was finished with what he was doing. But the boat was now in the middle of the sea. So the boat had already made it, a good way, halfway across to where it was going. And not only that, but it was agitated by the waves, so the wind was against it. So it's windy, and it's blowing against it, and so the waves are starting to bounce the boat all over the place. And in the 4th watch of the night, Yeshua went to them walking on the sea. And when the taught ones saw him walking on the sea, now bear in mind, they're awake because their boat is being bounced about all over the place. The storm is raging a little bit here. Not so much a storm, but it's windy. It's bouncing them all around. And so they see him, and when they saw him, they were troubled because they didn't know it was him at first. They thought, it's a phantom, it's a ghost, it's something. What is this we see walking across the waters? And from fear they cried. Now, I think a really important point here is that most fear comes from an aspect of something that is unknown. Some aspect of whatever is causing your fear is there's something that is unknown. Now, they didn't know if they should be afraid of whatever was coming, but it was unknown. So their first default was to be afraid. Maybe it was somebody good. It was somebody good. It was Yeshua coming. But they didn't know. So our brains, by the way, tend to do this. We tend to jump to the most fearful or fear-creating conclusion of whatever's going to go on without enough information to know what's going on. So we fill in those unknowns with usually not positive things, but negative things that will scare us. Let's not do that, okay? Nothing wrong with having a proper reaction of concern to a reality of a situation, okay? But when it's unknown, why do we have to always go to the worst scenario? Now, I don't mind you thinking of the worst scenario and saying, okay, if that's the worst, this is how I'm going to handle it, okay. But why would you be afraid? Because I can promise you, fear kills. When I was a lifeguard, now we're going back, over 40 years, okay? When I was a lifeguard in my teenage years, we learned very quickly that people don't drown because they can't swim. Because even if you can't swim, you can tread pretty good just out of instinct. They drown because they panic, all right? The fear kills. You have it in you to instinctually flap your arms around, your legs around, do something, and keep your head above water. But it's the panic that kills you, okay? So here, they're filling in the blanks already. They're crying out in fear. Verse 27. But immediately Yeshua spoke to them, saying, take courage, it is I, do not be afraid. So he was very compassionate and immediately spoke up and said, whoa, don't panic, it's me, all right? And Kepha answered and said, Master, if it's you. See, Yeshua says at one point, my sheep know my voice. They didn't yet. They were getting there. Because Kepha's like, okay, if it's you, prove it. So he says, Master, if it's you, command me to come to you on the water. And he said, come. He said, no problem, come. And when Kepha had come down out of the boat, he walked on the water to go to Yeshua. So this is one of those tricky questions people can ask when you go and ask somebody on the street and say, how many people have ever walked on water? And I said, well, one. They'll go, Messiah. No, Peter did. 2. Peter walked, at least to a point. So then this is where the problem comes in. He's walking on the water to Yeshua, and when he saw the wind was strong, he was afraid. Now, this is a man who's walking on water. All of a sudden, he's afraid of the wind. But that's how dumb we are at times. I mean, I'm not trying to insult Peter here. I'm just saying, we have all the stuff that is happening that clearly is miraculous and all kinds of things to give us encouragement, and then we see something and we start to panic. Forgetting that we're already, some of you do that now in your walk. You came out of whatever life you were in, you came out of whatever lifestyle you were in, you came out of whatever dumb thing you were in. Now you've been doing this walk, your life is incredibly better in most ways. Not always, most ways. But then one aspect of your life starts blowing its wind at you, and you forget that you're already a walking miracle. And you start to panic. So then the wind's blowing, so he cries out. Because the wind was strong and he begins to sink. Why did he begin to sink? Because the wind was blowing or because he started to panic? It's because he started to panic, got afraid. Look, if you're going to let fear win over, fear and doubt win over trust and belief, whatever area of your life you're dealing with, you're going to start to sink. Okay, that's the picture here that you're supposed to be getting. So if there's some area of your life where you're starting to sink and starting to drown, you should be asking yourself, what am I not believing, trusting? Where's my fear and doubt coming from? What's the issue? A lot of the counseling I do, Elder can tell you this, a lot of the counseling I do comes down to me figuring out, having them figure out really, digging under to find out what the fear is under the problem. The problem is coming from fear, okay? Now, someone might say, well, it's not fear, I'm just not able to do that. Well, no, you think you're not able to do that because you're afraid in somewhere. Maybe it's not just that you can't do it because you're afraid that you can't handle not being able to do it. There's a fear under something. I mean, underneath there's some fear. So he starts to sink and he cries out, Master, save me. And immediately Yeshua rolled his eyes and stretched out his hand. I just picture it that way. He's just like, oh, come on, Peter. All right. Put out his hand and took a hold of him and said to him, oh, you of little belief, why did you doubt? Okay? And it's not just belief. It's belief more in the form of trust, isn't it? Why didn't you trust? It was working. You had your eyes on me. I mean, that's the way it's always taught, right? He took his eyes off of Messiah. Well, he could have looked left and right and all over the place. He wouldn't have necessarily drowned. He panicked is why he started to sink. But the reason he panicked is he didn't actually keep his eyes on who and what he was doing this with, what was really going on. Remember, I said this is a relationship between trust and knowing or not knowing him. He knows Yeshua up to a point. Because after all, he threw out this really bold statement. Hey, if you're Messiah, command me to come walk out to you. Now, if he was just bluffing and throwing a wild thing out there, you wouldn't have seen him. The next thing he did was put his foot on top of the water and start walking. Somewhere he believed if it really was Messiah, he could do this. But how deeply did he know, did he know it in his inner being, Because then he would have just walked out there and been fine and walked back with him. See, all of you can walk on water. I'm not even saying literally, I'm just saying keep your eye on him, trust him, know him. What is this talking about? When he says you can, you can. Yeshua said to him, come. What is that? Literally what he's saying. He said, I am telling you, you can do this, right? Peter said, command me to come. He said, well, come. He wasn't setting him up for a prank, so he just fall in the water and drown. He came and he started walking. All of you have been hand-selected at the moment. I mean, I say hand-selected, I don't mean like other people around the world are never going to get selected. Your timing and him picking you at this moment was his hand selection. He picked you for this time, for this moment. And I say this every Rosh Chodesh when we do the new moon service. And he told you, when he did so, by doing so, he was telling you, you can do this. But when you have that moment of doubt, you're like Peter right here sinking in the water. Because you said, well, if I can do this, command me to leave my family, move to Tennessee, and all this other stuff. No, really. It's not what he really said. But you know what I'm saying? You made these huge life changes. And he said, yes, make those changes. It will be just fine. Now, notice that when Peter started walking on the water, the wind didn't stop blowing. If anything, it maybe picked up a little bit just to see how distracted he would be and how courageous he was to really, truly believe and trust when Yeshua said he could do it, he could do it. But where are you in your faith? Because look what he says to Peter at the end. He says, oh, you of little trust, little belief, little faith. Why did you doubt? Why did he doubt? Because he hadn't fully embraced who he was dealing with and how that was supposed to manifest in his life. See, some people think they fully embrace who and what he is, but you're not fully embracing what that actually means to you, how that should be impacting your walk, your life, your journey. And then you make a lot of decisions out of fear and doubt instead of out of trust and belief, and things don't work, and you wonder why it's not working. I mean, do you trust him enough to obey him? And then in obeying, do you trust him enough that you trust that the obedience is going to lead to blessing and other good things? Do you or not? I don't know. Only that's between you and him. But as we're reading this, we can see where the problem was. And when they came into the boat, the wind ceased. Oh. Now, I'm going to believe because the wind stopped that the wind was there on purpose. Yeshua was using it for a reason. He purposely picked the time when the wind was blowing to have this whole thing play out. He didn't need the wind for his lesson to be taught once he stepped in the boat. So the wind ceased. It was no longer needed. He had already made his point. In your life, there's going to be plenty of storms and wind. Plenty. But are you going to trust him as you walk on the water in the middle of that wind? Because that's what he's asking you to do. Because walking on water is something you and I probably, I'm sure we would never believe we could do it. Okay, if I ask you right now, hey, do you think you walk on water? Like, no, I think like a rock. Well, there's a lot of things he's really asking you to do. He's not asking you to walk on water. He's asking you to do something metaphorically in your life like that. Things that he's asking you to do, that you need to do, that you can't imagine that you can do it. Are you going to trust him? Are you going to have him look at you instead of saying, well done, good and trustworthy servant? He's going to say, oh, you of little trust, little belief. I don't want to hear that. Now listen to what happens to the rest of the guys in the next verse. And those in the boat came and did bow to him, saying, truly, you are the Son of Elohim. They're like, wow, Now, this story I read first, even though it's chronologically out of order to the next one I'm going to read, but I want you to understand, having just read this, how even more strange it is that this played out this way when it comes after the one I'm about to read. So go back to chapter 8 of Matthew. Another boat story. All right? So keep that in mind. Now we're going to go back in time. Now this already happened by the time we get to what we just read in Matthew 14. Matthew 8, verse 23. Okay? He says, and when he entered into a boat, his tall ones followed him. This time he's going in the boat with them. And see, a great gale arose on the sea so that the boat was covered by waves, but he was sleeping. And his tall ones came to him and woke him up, saying, Master, save us, we're perishing, we're dying. All right, now remember, this is happening, and these guys already went through this, and then we get this wind blowing, and they still sort of don't get it. So watch what's happening here. First of all, these are, many of them anyway, fishermen. And I would guess that even the ones who aren't fishermen have been on boats plenty, because that's a major way of transportation in those days. And so if they're thinking that they're dying, this must have been an incredible amount of wind, storm, waves just crashing into the boat, and the thing was getting filled with some water. And so they're like, we're perishing. And he said to them, now he was asleep during all this. Look, I don't know how asleep he is, because sometimes you know how you can be asleep, but you're also kind of aware. I think he's watching what they're doing. He's laying there just, you know. And he said to them, why are you afraid, O you of little belief? Then, having risen, he rebuked the winds and the sea, and there was a great calm. And the men marveled, saying, what is this, that even the winds and the sea obey him? They didn't know him yet, did they? They knew some things about him. They didn't know everything about him. They were starting to learn about him. And so he rebukes the sea and the wind, and everything just calms right down. Now, of course, he said, you of little belief. Why would he say that? He was saying that not why we have little belief. They believed that maybe he can handle things. They said, Master, save us. What he was trying to say was, you didn't need me to do that. You were never perishing. I'm in the boat with you. Doesn't matter what it looks like. Anybody need to hear this in their own lives? It doesn't matter what it looks like if he's in the boat with you. That's where a lot of you get all messed up. You forget that he's in the boat with you, and you start to panic and flip out and have a meltdown and then call us. In your emotions and all flipping out. I'm like, but he's in the boat with you. So what he's trying to tell them is the appearances were not real. See, fear is false evidence appearing real. Okay, look at it as an acronym. False evidence. They believed from the evidence in front of them that they were going to die. But there was a piece of evidence they weren't paying attention to. They're not in a storm by themselves. They're in a storm with Yeshua in the boat. And I'm sure if they just calmly just trusted it, it would have been fine. This was a test, and they failed. Because he's sitting there going, come on, guys, really? Now, having said all that, then we go to the one in chapter 14. The wind is blowing. He's not in the boat this time. Now, we don't hear them panicking about dying quite, but they're crying out because the wind is like, oh my gosh. So they haven't said we're perishing, but it's the same idea. We're thinking, okay, maybe you're more justified because he's not in the boat this time. However, he took it to a deeper level. In the first situation, he was in the boat with them physically. In the second situation, he sent them in the boat. And you have to realize he's not sending you to do things that are going to kill you. He's not sending you to do things you cannot do. So they failed in the next level of it, which is, well, he's not with us, so maybe we are dying. No, he sent us here, so we're not dying. He didn't send us out here to drown. This goes back to like Egypt. Every time they came out of Egypt, not every time, when they came out of Egypt, every time they got afraid of this, afraid of that, or whatever, they said, oh, did you send us out here to die? No, these guys were aware of those stories too. He said, I sent you out there to live, not to die. And to the apostles, like, look, I'm not done with you. I got jobs for you guys. I got tasks for you guys to do. But I'm trying to see where you're at. This is the same thing that was going on with Moses all the time. Yahweh was always trying to see, where are you at, Moses? How do you feel about leadership? How do you feel about these people? Where's your fear and doubt? Where's your anger? Where's your pride and ego? He's just checking. These are like little pulse checks on these various people. And Yeshua is allowing these things to happen for his disciples. Get a little spot check on, hey, where are they now? Hey, where are you guys right now? So you see, had they really known him, they would never have been afraid. In your life, same thing, okay? If you would really know him, you would never be afraid. The fear of Yahweh teaching is all about that, right? Fear Yahweh and be afraid of nothing ever again. Now, never be afraid again. Just fear him. Trust him. Awe, reverence, respect. That's the type of fear. The highest level of awe, reverence, and respect. So how can he trust us? Can you trust somebody who's prone to panic, to handle anything you give them if there's a chance something might come up that they would panic about? No. I mean, when you're selecting somebody for a job that has a good chance it could go sideways, at least temporarily, you're going to think first, will that person handle it when it does go sideways? How will they handle it? And sometimes you go in your brain, they're going to panic. I can't use them. Do you want Yahweh to look down at you and say, you're going to panic, I can't use you? But yet you'll call here all the time in a panic. Look, there are a lot of tragedies that come up in your life, and we can give you comfort, so to speak. Like I'm saying, we can give you some comfort, guidance, but there's zero, I'm going to say this really clearly, zero reason for you to ever be in a panic. Even though some really terrible things could be happening, there's no reason to panic about it. Don't you trust? Don't you have emunah? Emunah is what? Full trust and belief that he has everything under control. He causes or allows everything. So you have a child who got really sick, might die. That's upsetting. That's sad. Why are you panicking? Well, he might die. Okay, he might. Why are you panicked? Don't you believe in a resurrection? Don't you believe in a creator? I mean, you claim a lot of things. You claim a lot of things. Now, I'm not saying you don't have any sad or other emotions. Why the panic, though? Why the fear? Well, if they die, I don't know what I'll do. Well, yeah, you'll be sad and you'll mourn and you'll move on. Like everybody else does with all the other people in their life that have died. Every generation eventually dies, and the next one is there mourning loss of the ones that left. You'll do this with your job, an even less tragic thing, and you'll be in a panic that you're going to lose your job. Why is losing a job such a panicky situation? How did you get it in the first place? I mean, did you like have a miracle and get one job and you never qualified to get anything else ever in your life? Like seriously, like if I fired all of you right now from your jobs, you couldn't go back to wherever you live and get another one in a week? No, I couldn't. I've been looking. Because you're not looking through the right lenses. You're only looking for what you want to do. There's work. And don't buy into that whole lie about, well, you should only do what you love. Well, what you love may not pay very well. Know what the number one reason of work is? The financial compensation you get so you can pay for things, so you can live and deal with all the stuff we deal with. You got to generate an income. If I tell you right now, if I fired Elder right now, you get a job next week or less, okay? If all you disappeared, not another penny came this way, I'd be able to get a job next week or less. Probably be dashing and whatever while I'm trying to find a job. I'd be driving 12, 15 hours a day while I'm looking for work. I mean, that's out there. But you guys are doing nothing, some of you. But you're afraid. You're panicked. Don't panic. He called you, right? What's the verse say? It says, you were not called to the spirit of fear. In other words, you were not called to have an intrinsic nature, a fear nature. He said you were called to have a sound mind. Now notice how he didn't say you weren't called to the spirit of fear, you were called to the spirit of something else. To battle the spirit of fear, he said you need to use your mind. Oh, backs up everything I've been telling you, hasn't it, for years? How the mind has to be the stronger one over the emotions. The fear is down here, it's an emotion, okay? Up here, you recognize something may go badly, or something already has gone badly. Your response to it, though, Before the logical brain could decide what to do with it, the emotion just flies out, flipping out, and now you're frozen and can't do anything. Because the emotion just jumped out front. All right? Because if I ever got fired, my first thought is, okay, maybe for a half a second, deal with it emotionally. My first thought is, okay, what am I going to do now? Because I'm going to go do something and I'm going to get that fixed today. If it's early enough in the day, or tomorrow, okay? Whatever it is. But you're still panicking. You find out you've got maybe potential cancer. Well, either you do or you don't. It may or may not get healed. So accept those realities and find a way to thrive under those realities for as long as you can. But instead, you're going to make it worse because you're going to be afraid. And you're going to panic. And you're going to flip out. We know many do. And that only tears your immune system down. Just it's like a wrecking ball to your immune system. Okay? It's not going to work. So I just thought it was interesting to read the Peter walking on the water first and say, well, wait a minute. Just a little journey earlier, they had this little moment. And yet he's still saying, where is your trust? Why don't you understand who I am and what I'm doing? It's just like Peter didn't understand it when he said to Yeshua was talking about how he's going to go to Jerusalem, they're going to arrest him and kill him and all this stuff. And Peter's like, oh no, be kind to yourself, Master. It's like, why would you ever correct him? You know. Peter also has a full Israelite moment when, Yeshua goes to wash his feet, he says, no. And then when he says, but you have to let me do it or forget it, you don't have anything of me, then he says, wash all of me. That's like the Israelites going into the land. No, we don't want to go. Oh, sorry, you don't get to go. Oh, no, now we want to go. Now we want to wash my head, my toes, and everything. True Israelite, that Peter. Okay? Because that's the way we are at times. We just run by our emotions. Now, he was going to go through enough changes, especially after he denied Yeshua 3 times. He was going to go through enough changes where he could finally get the emotions in check. Because you're not going to be trustworthy if your emotions are out of control. Okay? You can't. Can you trust an emotional person? Anybody in your life you think about, if you had to could you really trust them with something important if you know they're emotional in that area? No. And some of you need to own, that's why people don't trust you. Because some of you are like, I don't understand why nobody trusts me, because you're whining like that. That's why. Okay? Because your emotions are driving. I'm going to look for someone who's got self-control, which is a fruit of the Ruach, right? Control over self. By the way, control over self doesn't mean that if I want to lift my arm, it goes up. Okay? That's not a tough thing for anybody that doesn't have a handicap, right? Anybody can just, I want my arm to go up, it goes up. Self-control is dealing with this and this. Okay? Your mind and your emotions. That's where the discipline needs to come in. Because when my emotions and my mind are disciplined, I can get my body to do almost anything. All right? So let's just make sure we're keeping that clear, because this whole trust thing is really about how much do you know him? Because if you really knew, by the way, it's the same thing with the ministry. You know why you don't listen to us? Because you don't know us and you don't trust us. Okay? But it's funny because you come and ask anyway. But then you won't do what we tell you to do. I'm talking about the guidance, not like we tell you what to do. I said we give you guidance. Look, this is what I think you should do, or this is how I think you should handle this. Then you'll come back and you didn't do it. And we'll ask you, did you do it? Nope. Why didn't you do it, though? Well, I didn't agree with you. Well, then why'd you come and ask me? Will you come and ask me to see if I agreed with you? Or you come and ask me if you want my guidance? Go back to Deuteronomy 17. Not listening is arrogance. Otherwise, don't come. Don't come and ask for help and guidance if you're not willing to listen. Okay, this is not like, you go to the doctor and then you want to go and get a second and third opinion. It's not like when you're making some financial decisions, you go to one financial planner, another financial, and you're going to compare notes or whatever. This is ministry. This counsel is coming from above. You can believe that or not. That's part of the problem, right? Do you believe it's coming from above? Well, I don't know if I can believe anything. You yelled at us during praise time. Well, you needed to hear it. I'm sorry. I read this book a lot, as you would imagine, and he yells at them a lot. Okay? But you know what I don't have in my arsenal of choices that he does? I don't get to curse you 7 times to get your attention. All I can do is tell you, sit down and shut up. Get away from the mic. I mean, I don't have any way to curse you. He curses people. And if they don't listen, guess what he does? Curses them some more. In other words, he creates enough pain to get them motivated to go forward. I can't do that. I don't have any leverage. So I sit and I suffer. But I don't get upset about it or panic or fearful because I recognize that's my job. Okay? You know, some of you will have your children, and this comes up in the congregation all the time. You have little children, 2, 3, 4, 5 years old, and you come here and you want them to just behave or whatever so that you can fellowship because you want some adult time finally. Too bad. Your responsibility is them, which means you don't get to have this other stuff until they're bigger, okay? But you don't want to deal with that. Well, why'd you have children then? That's part of the job, okay? Some of you men don't understand. You wanted to get married. First of all, you didn't understand to go out and get the job and make the money before you got married. Then you get married, you understand your responsibility to provide and protect that woman. And you still want to run around like you're single, doing all the things, hanging out with you guys, whatever. And the ladies, you do the same thing. When your status changes, you must change in accordance with the status change. Your status was supposed to change from world to covenant. But the only reason you do or don't do that is your level of belief and trust in him and how much you know him and how well you know him. That's why that teaching is so important. Do you trust him enough? Which really means do you know him well enough to obey him? Because the only reason, listen, I have no problem and you have no problem with most of the commands like, hey, I can agree, we all agree stealing's no good, right? We can all agree murder's a bad idea. We can all agree committing adultery is not good for anybody. We can all agree, a bunch of things we can agree. What about those ones that are less convenient because you love your catfish or you love your shrimp or you love your bacon, your pork bacon? Well, that's not so convenient. So the only reason you're giving that stuff up is because you know him and trust him that you're going to obey him. Okay? Or you really love whatever you used to do on Saturday. See, that's where your problem is. If you know him well enough, then you understand I made a status change. And that status change means I cannot act like the other person I used to be. When I got married, I could no longer act in any way, shape, or form single. Whatever that looks like, okay? I couldn't think single, do things behavior-wise like a single. I had to always be aware I have her, okay? Now, of course, I wanted that. But did I actually think about, and I don't even remember back that far now, it's 25 years, but I'm saying, but did I actually think about how all of my life was going to change? See, we warn people when it comes to babies especially, hey, a young couple especially, getting married, hey, just understand that as soon as you want babies, that's great, but as soon as you have babies, life is going to change. Not in a bad way, life is just going to be different. Well, what do you mean? You'll see. Just know. It will be different. You cannot act like a married couple, no children, when you're a married couple now with children. You can't, because now your status changed from just husband and wife to husband, wife, and mom and dad. So now you got 2 hats you're trying to wear, okay? 3 really, because you also have man, woman. And it gets a little bit, challenging to make sure you know which hat you're wearing and how that's supposed to go. But by the way, the single hat disappeared. The married without kids hat disappeared. There's no hat for that anymore. And so you should be thinking about these things up front. Well, then you went through life. I don't know how happy you were. Most of you said you were miserable, so that's fine. You were miserable before he called you. I think most of us are. I mean, that's the best place for him to pick us is from, is when we're lying on our back, staring up at the sky crying, okay? And we're miserable. And then he calls you and he touches you, starts to reveal himself to you. And then at some point along that journey, you realize, I need to change my status. I'm going to choose, that's the mikvah declarations, right? I'm going to choose my status change to being a citizen of the kingdom of Elohim. I'm going to change and covenant with my Creator and no longer be of the world. I'm still in the world, but I'm not going to be of the world. I'm going to make that change. There's no going back. You can't make that change and still act like and do like worldly things, things of the world, things you did that were world things. Now you do covenant things. I mean, there's some things that both groups do. Okay, both groups get dressed in the morning, both groups eat breakfast or whatever, or eat lunch. Both groups do a lot of things, but you eat different stuff. Okay, the way you approach things is different, not like the world does. Maybe both groups go to work, but you go to work with a whole different attitude of giving a full, honest day's work to that employer, not stealing from them. You're not sitting there during office hours, texting and Facebook messaging and everything else you guys do. You're not stealing time. Your status changed. When he says, well done, good and trustworthy in what? Trustworthy in being what he called you to be, which is covenanted and the other hats. A covenanted husband or wife or father or mother or single, right? Man or woman. But he called you. And he also gives us that, I think it's a beautiful thing Paul said. It's not really clear what he was talking about when he said, look, I came to find that whatever condition I'm in, I need to have peace. I need to be okay with it. Because I may be in all kinds of different conditions, whether I'm being drowned or whether it seems like everything's going great. People think I walk on water. Well, he didn't, but you know what I'm saying? I'm sure a lot of the people in this congregation thought he was the best thing since sliced bread. And that was even before sliced bread. Okay? But that being said, there are others that thought he was the biggest loser or whatever, and they would attack him. They arrested him. There was all kinds of things like drownings and stuff. I mean, he had a lot of challenges. You got challenges too, but you know what? I think, even though he's not the one who said it, James did, I think he counted it joy. He learned to be at peace and have joy in all those different situations. Just like James says in James 1, he says, count it joy when you're in a trial. In other words, choose to have joy no matter what's happening. But just, can we get there? Can we get there? Look, I like those two stories a lot because every one of you has these things really, not so much the walking on the water thing, but you have these two situations, okay? Situation number one, okay, he is with you. Let me ask a question. Do we not agree? Is he with you? Yes. Every day? Yes. All day? Yes. Then what's the problem? Okay? He's with you. And then he's going to ask you to do certain things or send you to do certain things, like he sent them out on the boat. And guess what? It may get a little rough, but he sent you. Why don't you trust who sent you? Israel didn't trust that when they came out of Egypt. But they didn't know him yet. You know what you're showing when you don't trust him? You really don't know him yet. You still only know him in part. Looking through that glass dimly, etc., right? You just still don't know him. You know about him. You have some ideas, like it's a little more than just knowing about him. But deep, deep down, do you really know him? And not only know him, but do you understand what he wants for you? Some of you are like, I wish he would just tell me what he wants for me. He wants you to trust him. He wants you to do everything you can with all your might and strength that he puts you on a path to do. And I'm not talking about ministry. I'm talking about a path to do. He's giving you a life as a man or a woman. He's giving you a life as a single or a married. He's giving you a life with kids or without. He's giving you a life to do things. And he's wanted to see, can you find a way to thrive? Okay? I laugh sometimes when I watch the news and I see all these people flipping out about how the world is getting so difficult. Somebody's going to thrive. Matter of fact, lots of people are going to thrive. Okay? All right? Lots of people are going to thrive. And that being said, hey, you could be that person. Why not? You know why they're going to thrive? Because they're going to choose to. Do you know more wealthy people, more of the highest levels of wealth get created in terrible times by the people that choose to see it as an opportunity instead of a whining panic situation? More people are going to find more success right now during these challenging times than, say, a few years back when it wasn't so challenging. because you're going to really tighten things up, make some hard choices, and get some discipline and do what you need to do. It's really easy to do things kind of half, you know what, when things are great. Because even when things are great, no matter how little you do, it still kind of works out. But just kind of works out is the level you stay at. Anybody happy being it kind of works out? That's not a fun level to stay at, okay? It's called mediocrity, it's called complacency, it's called it sucks. Because it does. It's awful. But when things are hard, you have to work harder to get just to even that level. And guess what? When things get good, working at that higher level, you're going to get even greater results. Because you already learned to work at a higher level when it was harder to do, okay? Then when it gets easier, wow, you're going to just explode, okay? But he's putting you on these paths. He did not call you to fail. He called you to succeed. I'm not just talking about money, but every aspect of your life. In your relationships, in your physical body. And by the way, that doesn't mean that you get rid of all the diseases, but you could certainly be doing a lot better with your body. Most of us can. I know I certainly can, than I'm doing right now. Okay? Relationships, emotions, okay? Spiritual side of life, I mean, are you doing all that you can do in that area? And it's not about how many minutes you study your book and how many hours you pray and everything else. It's like, how vertically aware are you in everything you're doing? I'm going to say something. If I'm wrong, he can strike me down, okay? I'm saying this out of my mouth, but I believe it's his words, okay? I believe, well, not his words, I think it's the way he feels. I believe that he really is impressed with and appreciates a person who every moment in all that they're doing is vertically aware, way more than the person who sits at home and studies all day and reads their Bible and gets on their knees all the time whining, okay? The person who never picks up the book, listens to a teaching here or there, shows up at services, but is always trying to be vertically aware. Well, what am I doing? Am I pleasing him? Is he looking down going, hey, I'm proud of you, good job, good job. You know, that's, I think, much more impressive to him. There's a whole segment of the Orthodox Jews that think that the government should pay them so they don't have to work because they need to be studying all day and studying all day. That only makes you tired. You know what's more important? Doing what you learned. How about doing what you learned? How about applying what you learned? All right? So, as this is going on, again, I know I'm beating this hard. These two parables, these are not even parables, these things happened, but for us, they're like a parable. They're a message in the actual thing that happened. He is with you always. Don't panic. Trust him. How can you be a trustworthy servant if you don't trust him? Because are you going to do the job the best you can, the right way, if you're not trusting the one who sent you to do the job? You gotta trust him. Absolutely, you have to. All right, let's go to Proverbs 20. Mishlei, Proverbs chapter 20, and in verse 6. Most men proclaim each his own kindness, but who finds a trustworthy man? That kind of fits into what we've been talking about, doesn't it? Okay? So you say, most men proclaim each his own. They're boasting. He said, but who can find a trustworthy man? So why would that be in the same sort of thought or sentence there? In other words, people claiming all they're claiming, but are they actually trustworthy to be what they claim? All right? Let's go back to verse 4, and get the context. The lazy one does not plow after the autumn. At harvest time he inquires, there is none. Counsel in the heart of a man is like deep water, but a man of understanding draws it up. Most proclaim each his own kindness, but he who finds a trustworthy man. But who finds a trustworthy man? The righteous man walks in his integrity. His children are blessed after him. So let's break this down a little bit. Look at the two approaches. That's why in the middle of all this, he talks about who can find a trustworthy man. So first you get a lazy one. What's the lazy one's problem here? The lazy one doesn't plow after the autumn, and at harvest time he wonders why there's nothing growing. So what does a lazy one do? Now, by the way, some of you are lazy, but this person's not a lazy person in that he doesn't work. He plowed. In other words, he did his harvest, right? He did all that, but he didn't do the next thing. Why? Because he's not thinking ahead, okay? Actually, that's not true. You guys all do this, he did this. He's thinking ahead at all the things he wants to do that has nothing to do with what he has to do. That's what's happening here. So he's thinking, harvest is done, playtime. No, now you got to get the field ready for what you're going to plant for the next harvest. Not playtime, okay? It's work time. Well, I don't like all that. Well, then don't have a farm. It's work time. He gave us 6 days to work. Now, if you could get all your work done in less, great. If you can make all the money you need, great. But you have 6 days to work. And I don't know how many of you guys, we announce things like unleavened bread, right? We announced this a couple of months back, and I can't tell you how many people over the next couple of months before we got to here called up and said, or we talked to them and said, hey, you coming? They're like, well, I don't know, I can't really afford it, or I don't know that I can get the time off. Why are you not planning ahead for these things? I don't understand. All right, I'm going to be harsh, okay? Well, you'll think it's harsh. I'm not really meaning to be harsh. If you have a job, and that job pays you fine, and that job does not allow you enough time to take off for the feasts, why don't you have a different job? I understand how you can't maybe change it in time, like as soon as you find out about feasts, you're still in a job, so you can't fix it that year maybe. But why 5 years later do you still struggle to get time off for the feasts? You know, there are jobs that'll let you do that. Okay, there are. How many of you have a job where you get to take off enough time for the feast? Look at all those hands. Almost the vast majority. But some of you are like, well, you know, my boss just won't let me do it, so I can't do it. Well, that's fine. Are you ever going to fix it? Or are you just going to be like, oh, well, you know. That's like this guy here. He's lazy. He's not thinking about what he needs to do next. If you have a job that doesn't really work well with Saturday, it's having Saturday off, why are you not immediately planning to get a different job? If your job won't let you take off for feasts, why are you not immediately looking for a different job? Oh, but you know, I'm afraid I won't be able to find, you know, stop whining. Okay? Anybody remember, like, you know, A League of Their Own? Right? There's no crying in baseball. There is no whining in the kingdom, okay? He calls whining witchcraft, all right? Whining is like under witchcraft. Actually, whining is like on the ground opening up and killing you. You whine and whine and whine. Why do you not think, you have little belief, you can't believe that you can actually fix this problem? You can't believe he can fix this problem? By like, as you go looking, help you find something? Where's your belief in him? All the miracles he's done in your life? But you're going to sit there and use an excuse, well, I can't come because, you know. That's a terrible excuse. Now, I'm not talking about you on fixed income. You should be just calling us, making a case that you really have a challenge, and then we'll help you get here. And we'll help you with your feast. Okay? If you are widowed, elderly, or disabled, and all these other things, and you can't produce for yourself, that's what we're here also to help you do. Elder will tell you, do this all the time. But if you're able-bodied enough to go out, I don't want to hear it. I got people asking me to help them with their feast who have no reason why they can't make money to do this. And I'm like, really? Get out there and drive. Then I hear this, oh, I don't have a car. How do you not have a car? Why is that not an emergency to fix? Then I'll get someone saying, I don't have a license. I never learned how to drive. You're 47 years old. You never learned how to drive? What's wrong with you? When are you going to own your life? What, are you waiting for someone to come over to you and beg you to take a driver's lesson and hand you a license? Go out there. Look, you know what? Nobody helped me. I got my driver's, in New York it was a little older than it is here in the South. I got my driver's license at 18, got my permit at 17, and I bought my own car at 18 or 19. Nobody bought it for me. Okay? Okay, don't say, oh, well, I didn't come from a rich family. And my family didn't buy the car for me. I bought the car. take responsibility. He talks about lazy people. And by the way, you guys think I'm all mean. He called people lazy. He said, this lazy guy over here doesn't do what he needs to do. Then he says, the righteous man, verse 7, walks with integrity. He walks in his integrity. You know what his integrity is? He's the guy claiming his own kindness and actually having integrity and having kindness. He's the one claiming he can take care of himself and he can take care of himself. By the way, gentlemen, please, I want you to immediately stop looking for a wife, if you're single. Stop looking for a wife if you can't even provide for yourself. Okay? Knock that off. These women do not need to be fooled, convinced, and teased by you when you can't take care of yourself. All right? If you're looking for a mama, go back to your mama. Don't go marrying one. I'm not playing games here. Because I get all these counseling sessions, I have to tell these women, no way. That guy can't even take care of himself. And you're like, you would say that? How mean of you. No. People ask me for guidance. I'm not going to go, because then I'm going to have to deal with the divorce. And all the misery when the wife is whining about the fact that she's taking care of her husband because he's too lazy to get up and do something. And you know why? Because you're single too long and you're comfortable with nothing. Because you got all these singles, they got a beat up, barely working car, and you look in it, it looks like a singles car, which means that it's gross, you don't even want to sit in it. If there's a space to sit. They live on Taco Bell, okay, and ramen noodles, and drink beer and are useless. That's it. And you guys are out there thinking, oh, I'm going to go over and talk to her. Why should she talk to you? What do you bring to the table? I'm charming. You're useless. Okay? That charm, you can't pay bills with charm. All right, go to the store, be charming, and see if they'll give you the groceries. I'll be a big, obnoxious jerk with money. They'll give me anything I want. Okay? That isn't going to get you food. Okay, but ladies, you want that guy? Why should he kill himself to be a great provider and do all the other things that you need, and you're not ready to trust him, submit to him, and allow him to do those things? Okay? And you're going to be all whatever, trying to mother boss him or whatever you're going to do, even though he doesn't need that. He's already successful. And I see that a lot. I got a bunch of successful guys with wives trying to run them. It's like, why are you trying to run them? They're already doing great. Leave them alone. Okay? But this, again, is about knowing and trust. Okay? There's integrity mentioned here. Guys, if you go to approach somebody and you can't actually close the deal, meaning provide what you're offering, hey, come marry me. Your life will be great. Why? Your life already sucks now without her. How great is it going to be? You're going to be miserable together? You haven't figured out anything. You don't have a great job, if at all. All right? Listen, you know what I almost got to say? If you're making less than, I would say if you're making less than $40,000 a year, you shouldn't even be trying to approach somebody. Okay? And you'll be like, well, your daughter got married and my son-in-law makes more than that. All right? I mean, you should not. Because you can't take care of yourself barely on $30,000 a year, which is $15 an hour. Remember, I don't know how you can pay rent, food, car, insurance, all that on that kind of money. Get out there and do something. Impress somebody. And don't strut around like, but I mean, just have it there. Because the guys who have it don't walk around trying to impress anybody. The guys who don't have it try to walk around trying to impress everybody. Or the ones who got it in some weird way and know they can't repeat it, but at least they have it for 5 minutes, they strut around. The guys who paid the price, they just walk around in their integrity with confidence. Hey, I paid the price. I got what I got. All right? So any guy trying to impress you with what he's got, he doesn't have it. Or he got it the wrong way and it's going to disappear in 5 minutes. You understand? Okay? Because if he got it the right way, he doesn't need to impress you with it. Okay? Do Shania Twain. That don't impress me much. Okay? All right? All right? All right. So you got a car. Big deal. All right? Some of you think you're Brad Pitt and all that other stuff in the song. Okay? You're looking at me like, how do you know all that stuff? My wife likes Shania Twain, and I took her to the concert recently. Okay, there you go. All right? I had to get a song reference in there somewhere. Okay, I skipped 3 or 4 others I could have said. Now, Are we understanding this in the good and trustworthy servant, okay? You must be understanding this question here is a real question. Who can find a trustworthy man? Even the apostles struggled with that because they weren't trustworthy in the boat. You know, I really believe, this is a positive thing, okay? When I say that, you guys get all nervous. I really believe Abba's got some incredible things he's going to put on your plate, your task list in the kingdom. But he's not going to do that if he can't trust you to do it and handle it. I mean, he may give you a solar system to play with, or a planet, or who knows, he may give you anything. But he's only going to do it if he can trust you with it. You guys aren't trustworthy with the little nonsense we got now here in the world. This is a life to demonstrate our trustworthiness. Okay? So we think all this well done, good and trustworthy servant is like some minor little thing. No, it's your whole life. Okay? Through and through, skin to bone, everything. Can you walk this out with enough integrity to be trustworthy? Okay? Because that's what the Proverbs is talking about right here. Where are we on time? We're good. Do I want to go to this one? All right, you know what? We're going to end this a little shorter here. I'm going to save this other stuff, which kind of shifts gears just a little bit, and we'll do it the next time. That'll still give us about 45 minutes for a Q&A. So that'll kind of work out just right. All right, Father, we come before you. Father, let us be inspired to be, all of us, men and women, trustworthy, that you might find us trustworthy, that we might be filled with integrity, that we would not have any fear and doubt, that we would know you so well that we would never have fear and doubt, but only that we would have trust in you. So, Father, we just want to thank you for the opportunity. We want to thank you for opening our eyes and our ears. Thank you for the words. I want to thank you for the words you've given me today. Thank you for those who had ears to hear, no matter how it came out in the form it came out, but that you would receive it as from him. So, Father, we thank you, we praise you, and we give you all glory and honor. In the name above all names, Yeshua our Messiah. Amen. Amen. Amen.